tell you the truth about 71,000 homes. You know, so that that expertise is more divided, and you do have a way to engage the community will of citizen volunteers. Maybe to learn a lot about baseline elevation and be able to help define that at homes, but they don't have to know every single thing about every single code to do that. And so how you get at that micro things. And the point of these events, like the session we did this morning, is to really define the opportunity much more than it is to come up with an idea. But there are a lot of connections to other things, particularly other disaster response initiatives, like the kind of voluntary squads of ham radio operators that are trained to show up in fire departments and help parse information and reports that are incoming after a disaster. How do you apply that same kind of community core mentality to all of the nerds, and I'm sorry if any of you are among them, that play the geocaching games. You know, the games where you have the complex latitude and longitude and some prize is hidden someplace, and you have a combination of clue and mapping information to find that prize? How do you get those people that know a lot about precision and actually have some of the tools to do some of these measurements? How do you tap into that community of people that are meeting on their free time and, you know, scouring the city to look for a huge capsule, so that they can tell other people they found it? So I think there's a lot of those examples of people that are willing to show up with their brains and their big hearts and their willing hands and the gear that they've accumulated, but they need a way to do it. And I think that's some of the place where the political will on both sides has to map, because one of the things that sort of underwrote a lot of what people said is that there has to be more forgiveness built into the process of becoming compliant with codes. Whether it's more time, or you have an ability to triage your code so that you don't have suddenly to pay more than your house is worth to get it, because they're coming to you with every single violation that you have, some of which matter a lot and some of which maybe don't matter so much. And so how do you do that? So more opportunities than responses to that, but I think there are a lot of places to engage communities like the center already has to build responses. Thank you.
Wow. I'd like to thank you to all of these excellent panelists for a combined presentation that was as informative as it was terrifying. I think, but in a good way, hopefully in a way that inspires action and the will that we were discussing rather than the head in the sand approach that Marnie brought up. So now we're opening it up to questions from the audience, and as I'm not seeing a stampede to the microphones that are set up both there and there, I will give the first question to the Brooklyn Long-Term Recovery Group who tweeted us, and if you tweet us really quickly, we can also maybe get yours in, but. So the question is, how can we assist seniors and disaster case managers who serve them to utilize floodhelpny.org, which is the website that we created? And since the center is the driving force behind Flood Help NY, I will kick that to myself very quickly, but then and say that as much hard work that has gone into the design and perfecting and tweaking of Flood Help NY, I mean, I think this really only starts. It's only really the start. A website like this, a tool like this, is only as good as the community outreach that we undertake with it, and particularly with regards to communities that are not going to just, learn about this resource on Twitter and just go right there and figure it out. And that's where working with some of the longer-term recovery groups and some of the networks that exist, both the more established ones in our community-based organizations, and also, Occupy Sandy and some of the more modular networks is really important, as well as thinking about in the future about possible increased language accessibility. And so we hope that the Brooklyn Long-Term Recovery Group will allow me to expand that question a bit slightly to talk about outreach that needs to happen generally and the type of experiences that we're having. So I was hoping that I could kick this to Catherine to talk about what, from the point of view of the city, what some of the outreach needs are, and then over to Susanna to hear about how, sorry, you've been engaging community members in areas like the Rockaways about climate change and the risks from that.
Thanks, it's a great question. We want to not only notify everyone in the current floodplain, but of course those in the expanding floodplain and those who potentially could be moving into the floodplain. And to do so, we have been partnering with CNYCN for over a year, as you've heard, to develop this tool. And now we'll also be engaging a ad firm to develop public service announcements, PSAs, even on, we'll do research to see where folks are getting information about whether they're in the floodplain or not. We'll be leveraging potentially bus terminals, subway lines, particularly those that go through the affected areas. So the procurement process is long and arduous, but we're working our way through that and should see this sort of messaging coming out early spring next year.